Stiff resistance was predicted during the battle to the Rhine, and stiff resistance was definitely encountered. To break up this resistance, Operation Blockbuster was set in motion, deploying 4 divisions divided into 4 phases, trying to achieve success by February 27th. As it turned out, Phase 3 was completed by then, but penetration here at the Hochwald Gap met with fierce resistance. After the 2nd and 3rd Canadian Infantry Divisions cracked the enemy's forward defences, the Canadian 4th Armoured Division would launch a night attack to breach the Siege-Helen position and push its armour through the Hochwald Gap, an overall distance of about 13 kilometres, which Canadian General Simmons hoped to cover in the first 24 hours. On the flanks, the British 43rd Wessex Division would clear the Rhine floodplain, and the British 11th Armoured Division would strike towards Sonsbeek.
The huge fire plan, which in sound and intensity reminded one of the Caen breakout, which opened up at 04:30 on February 26, and despite heavy going in the mud, good progress was made. By next day, 3rd Division had taken Udom and were overlooking the Hochwald. In the next few days, the forward troops made a number of unsuccessful attempts to push through the Hochwald Gap and also into the forest itself. They met a strong German defense. Meanwhile, the 2 forward observation officers on the primary objective were having a busy day, repelling repeated counterattacks from every direction. Casualties were heavy. Captain Buckner was hit twice in the head and temporarily lost his sight in one eye, but he would not be evaluated. He stayed up with the force and continued to bring down much needed fire all day, working in close liaison with Captain Baker, who had a close escape when his tank was hit and set ablaze. The efforts of these forward observation officers were instrumental in allowing our troops to hold their position through the Hochwald Gap, and from that, springboard further attacks which finally wound up the battle. Both Captain Buckner and Captain Baker were awarded the Military Cross for their work.
Farther south, the American Army crossed the River Rhine and fanned out in all directions towards the Rhine, and their spearheads were fast approaching the British and Canadian armies. March 8th and day 29 of the Rhineland conflict, the final battles began at Altenburg, Alpen, Wien, and Xanten. An attack on Xanten 2 days earlier had been thrown back. Now at 0500 hours in darkness and driving rain, 3 battalions supported by crocodile flamethrowers advanced behind an intense artillery barrage to try again. Hitler had ordered troops from the 6th Paratroop Division to fight to the last, and it took 4.5 hours of costly gallant fighting to overcome German resistance. Then crossed the anti-tank ditch a further 8 hours, a commitment of the 4th Battalion and more heavy casualties to flush the defenders out of the badly bombed town. For platoon commanders, some without radio, communication was a problem. In the noise and the smoke, it was far from easy to maintain control of sections, and to direct fire of supporting armor to dislodge the well-concealed defenders from the mass of rubble and craters.
Hello, BBC. This is Chester Wilmot speaking from Field Marshal Montgomery's headquarters. The German bridgehead west of the Rhine, opposite Basel, has been wiped out. Yesterday afternoon, 3 columns of Canadian, British and American troops reached the western end of the 2 bridges which the Germans had blown yesterday morning. The end was sudden and swift. On Friday evening, the Germans were still resisting strongly, holding a line across the neck of the bend on which Wesel stands. But during the night, they evidently withdrew the bulk of their forces, and when Montgomery's troops attacked yesterday morning, they found little more than rearguard parties covering roadblocks.
The battle for the Rhineland was one of the costliest battles. Allied casualties totaled nearly 23,000, the Canadians losing 5,300. The Germans lost approximately 90,000, of whom some 52,000 were taken prisoner. The 21st Army Group and the 1st Canadian Army senior commanders saw the battle for the Rhineland a success, claiming since the 1st Parachute Army had been defeated west of the Rhine, opposition would be negligible when they eventually crossed the river.
On March 2nd, 1945, Bombardier Douglas Trumper of the 23rd Field Regiment was killed in action during the Hochwald Gap when his tank took 3 direct hits from enemy positions. His inscription reads, "Sunshine fades and shadows fall, but sweet remembrance outlasts all." He was 26 years old. Bombardier Douglas Trumper and many Canadian soldiers here died fighting between the River Maas and the River Rhine.